The government called it a cut to the spare room subsidy, while Labour dubbed it the bedroom tax. But whatever you call it, the changes to housing benefit introduced last year certainly proved controversial.
They were designed to free up under-occupied homes, but BBC research out today has found that only 6% of people affected have actually moved. Let's talk about this more now. The Employment Minister, Esther McVey, is in our Liverpool studio. Very good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning. Do you consider this 6% figure, as this research has unveiled, a success or a failure?
Well, it's certainly not a failure. That's 30,000 people moving in 10 and 11 months. And it was never that you had to move. What we were saying to people is that these are the options for you. And let's look at why we're bringing this into being. It's because we have got 1.7 million people on waiting housing lists. It's because there are 400,000 people in overcrowded houses, and yet at the same time there is nearly 1 million spare bedrooms in the social rented sector. And what we've got to do is make sure that we're using our housing stock, a lot better. And at the same time, because there are many moving pieces to this conundrum, we've had the housing bill under Labour's term in office doubled in cash terms from 12 to 24 billion. So all of these things we had to look at, and we've got to say, so how do we best solve that problem? How do we move people into the right sized houses, and how do we make sure we get that housing bill down?
Well, there's two parts of this equation, isn't there, though? Because one is, as you say, what turned out to be, I think, overall quite a popular idea, that the right people should be in the right houses. And that was generally accepted to be quite a good idea. But the figures are not straightforward, are they? Because amongst the other figures that came out today is this figure that 28% of all people affected by the changes to housing benefit have now gone into arrears for the first time since last year. Now, arrears is a real cost. On the face of it, it's not one that's going to appear on your sums immediately, but that is money that's not being paid to a local authority, so the local authority is out of pocket. So overall, that becomes a very significant amount of money. And that's nearly 30% of all the people who are affected by this who are being put into arrears. Now, that is not healthy, nor is it economically sound.
Well, hang on a sec, Charlie. Those are the BBC figures, who only went to a certain percentage of the local authorities. So I question your figures, because actually what I hear coming back from, whether it's the National Housing Federation, or whether it's from local authorities myself, I'm not hearing that. In fact, they are saying there is an indiscernible increase in the number of people going into arrears. And actually already before this came into place, the removal of the spare room subsidy, 50% of people of working age on housing benefits were already in arrears.
Yeah, I'm looking now. I mean, the danger is we end up, swapping statistics. National Housing Federation. Can I just give you this one? The National Housing Federation.
Esther. Me, Charlie, then I need to give you the statistics that we're hearing. We're also hearing, because people are moving, that actually the waiting list, people who've been on a waiting list, those numbers are falling down.
But it's also the case, isn't it? I mean, if I look at the figures from the National Housing Federation, again, they're saying that 66% of housing association residents hit by the bedroom tax were in arrears. More than 1 in 7 had received a warning letter. Now, it becomes a false economy, doesn't it? If you end up with a situation with people in arrears, then possibly facing eviction, the cost of those evictions, whatever the small amounts you save on a weekly basis in terms of what's made up, is going to be, the cost overall is going to end up more.
But that isn't right, Charlie. And so what you'll see we've done is put 180 million in the first year of these changes, 165 million into the second rate of the year of these changes, and some of those actually went to help get rid of people's debt and arrears, which allowed those people to move homes, which allowed them to have a cheaper rent, which allowed them to get out of debt. So actually what had happened, the way the system had been gridlocked, it actually locked people people into debt, locked them into not being able to pay their bills. Hence, there was already a 50% people with debt. So actually, the stats we're getting back are showing that we're helping people live within their means, helping them move to a property that they could afford. And also, let's look at the fairness from another side. If you are the taxpayer paying for people to be on housing benefit, many of those cannot have spare bedrooms in their house. So how could they be paying for other people to have that? So as I said, you've got to look at this from the full 360 degrees. How do we best get use of our housing stock? How do we best allow people to live within their means? And for those people who are paying for that bill, how do they feel they are getting best value for money? Okay. So it is very difficult. I don't dispute that, but we're doing the right things. And from what we're hearing, what we'd put in place is happening.
Esther McVey, thank you very much for your time this morning. Esther McVey is the Minister of State for Employment. Thank you.
It is 17 minutes past 7.